Welcome to the Climate and Coordination RCAST, where every week we'll be discussing topics related to all things climate change and RChain's role in the solution. We will be discussing technologies that can adapt and coordinate massive amounts of data like never before, forming social architectures that grow collective intelligence, sharing and evaluating data planetarily, all while maintaining personal privacy and personal data ownership. A new decentralized economy is forming as we move from the third industrial revolution, digitization, to the fourth, decarbonization. By building a co-op, built on a correct by construction, concurrent, scalable solution, RChain is structured to build out the new technology that will be required for a flourishing regenerative planet. Please join us on this journey.
Welcome to this week's Climate and Coordination RCAST. We are very happy to be able to keep bringing you the latest in stories about climate and coordination. And today there's a variety of different subjects to discuss, so let's get to it. First, I wanted to share a story from Reuters, which has been talked about all over in the media lately, and it's about the horrible flooding in Australia that's going on. If you're not aware, Australia is in a real precarious position right now. It says here thousands evacuated in Australia's worst floods in nearly half a century, and of course you'll remember they were really dealing with fires, and now it's flooding. So I'll just read a little bit from this because I just feel so terrible for the people there that are having to deal with this. This is from Sydney. Australian authorities issued fresh flood warnings and evacuation orders on Tuesday as torrential rains again pummeled several parts of the country, sweeping away homes, roads, and livestock in the worst downpour in more than half a century. The National Weather Agency posted weather warnings in every mainland state or territory but one, affecting around 10 million people in the country of 25 million. So it's almost half the people of Australia across an area the size of Alaska. So this is a very big flood risk. It says here, no deaths were reported as of Tuesday, just 3 days ago, so that's great news. But it says here thousands of people have been rescued by emergency services in recent days. Authorities have ordered about 22,000 people to be ready to flee their homes, potentially joining already over 18,000 people who have already been evacuated. So it's quite a big task to deal with this. And it says here also in New South Wales, a fourth straight day of heavy rain was expected to combine with a coastal trough and increase the deluge overnight on Tuesday, even as the main city, Sydney, saw a reprieve by late afternoon. So I'm not sure exactly what the situation is now. I don't think they've gotten even more rain, but I know that they're still dealing with the damage of the water in a lot of homes. And there's a this is a little bit funny. It's actually sad, but it's funny. They talk about the fact that cows can swim, which I did not know that cows can swim, but apparently in a climate crisis, you learn things about nature. It says Dave Murray, a landscaper from North Richmond on the Hawkesbury, filmed with a head-mounted camera from his jet ski as he rescued his neighbor's 10 cows by forcing them to swim about 300 meters through floodwater that was 5 meters deep. So that's, I guess, about 15 feet. That's quite deep. I knew that they could swim because I've done it before, but I didn't realize they could swim as good as that. Emergency workers and inflatable rafts and even some surf boats, usually reserved for beach rescues, to reach stranded locals. So this is very, it's This is a horrible situation. I feel terrible that this is happening, but what I think is so funny is that cows can swim. Okay, so I'd love to pause there and see if anybody knows about this. Is this something you were aware of? And what do you think?
Well, because I'm always have something to say. In the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences, in April last year, a report was published, Advances in Understanding Large-Scale Responses of the Water Cycle to Climate Change. And one of the things that they predicted is that there would be an increase of around 7% of water in the lower atmosphere for every 1 degree of warming. And that causes heavier rainfall, which in turn increases flood risk, quote unquote. And oddly enough, when you Google around and look for Australia flooding climate change, there is an article in theconversation.com about this very topic that was reported. And in that article, they have a link to the research. So it won't just be Australia that floods. I don't know what it's like when it really rains in the United States. I only lived on the East Coast, but certainly wherever it does rain a lot, the idea that you get 7% more for every degree of change, you know, you're talking about potentially, you know, over 10%. What on earth would that do?
Yeah, exactly. And it was either 2018 or 2019 that there was all that horrible flooding in the Midwest, in Iowa, and all those places, which I understand costed an absurd amount of money and also, you know, ruined a lot of lives. So I wanted to share one more story about this situation in Australia, which is just, this is such a crazy story, but it really speaks to this guy's spirit and heart to keep going here. This is from BBC, March 24th, also reporting from Sydney. It says here, Australia floods, saving a home from fires only to lose it in floods. This is the craziest story.
Yeah.
This guy's name is Rob Costigan. I hope I'm saying that right, Costigan. It says the Australian farmer lost his dream home in the floods currently coursing through the nation. So basically, I think his house is still standing, but basically it says here, his carpeted living room resembles a muddy swamp. His flat screen TV has floated into the next room, and in his kitchen with its gleaming floorboards has been obliterated, which is horrible, absolutely horrible. But it says here, last summer, as a massive blaze circled Mr. Costigan's property in a valley near Wachope, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, north of Sydney, he spent 7 days, a whole week, staving off fire. This guy's a farmer, he's a firefighter, apparently he's just everything, potentially Superman. It says here, at that time, a years-long drought had made the taps run dry, so locals pumped water from a creek to fight the blaze. Apparently these people are irrigation specialists too. Mr. Costigan said he barely slept that week under an unearthly red sky, but the effort paid off because he was able to save his house. But unfortunately now, because there's this rain, the house has been, I don't know if it's been destroyed, but it seems like it's not going to really be livable. But this guy says, the fire and the drought haven't beaten us, and we're slowly getting through this pandemic. This isn't going to stop me from moving forward. There are a few quotes from him in here, but it's just, I don't know. I just don't even know what you say to somebody like that. But apparently he has the spirit and the resolve to, I don't know what you even say, continue trying to make his life work. And that is really beautiful story, I think, because people should not have to fight fires for a week and then lose their homes. I mean, it's just like, I just feel like we're really asking a lot of people, of people. And some of them are maybe thriving under those circumstances, people who are incredibly tough and resilient. But I just don't think it's fair that most people should have to deal with this. And to your point, Steve, about rainfall, another thing I learned is that climate change sort of relocates, that the droughts become worse and then the rainfall becomes worse. So it's that disparity between way too dry and way too wet becomes more pronounced, I think, in some places. Which
there's a more immediate crisis as well that results, which will hit us much sooner, and that is, and Greg might know what the figures are for this, but the concern is the washing away of the topsoil, right? You wash away the topsoil, nothing will grow.
Oh, all of the nutrients and everything in the soil.
Absolutely.
Oh,
and
yeah, that's what I was just about to point out, is that what happens is the fires come along and they wither everything so that there's nothing that can hold the topsoil down. And then the floods come after the fires. And this is exactly what's happening in Australia. And they wash away the topsoil because there's nothing there rooted to hold it down.
Oh, wow. I haven't even thought of that. Okay, we'll add that to the list.
Well, yeah, but this is what I've been saying all along, is that the arable land, places where you can grow food, is going to dramatically shift, which is also going to result in climate migration.
Absolutely. Yeah, and in fact, a lot of the climate migration, or people don't even call it climate migration, but they should, from South and Central America is for that reason, or that is one of the reasons.
Yeah. So it's so it's it's the things compound, one on top of the other.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's so special about nature, is it goes both ways. When you have conditions for life, then you get plants, then you get the photosynthesis, and you get all this, like, it compounds going one way, and then it can also compound going another. You know what I mean? Like backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the movie Interstellar. I'm not sure if people have seen that great Matthew McConaughey movie. But that's like one of my favorite space sort of futuristic science fiction films of the last few years, I guess, maybe. And the reason I really liked it so much was because they kind of explained why Earth became so desperate. And I think I don't know if they really talked about it, but I feel like they sort of illustrated that sort of Great Depression, Dust Bowl situation kind of on a long-term basis, which I felt was a great way to tell the story.
There's another article that was published in December of 2014 in Scientific American, and what it talked about, and if you couple this with the floods, right, it's worse. It says, talk about a sensationalist headline, and this is in Scientific American: only 60 years of farming left if soil degradation continues. And that was in 2014. So, we're now 2021. And so, we've got, we've already spent 7 years of that 60, so there's 53 years. But that doesn't take account of the speed up of the degradation that occurs from flooding and fires.
Sure.
So now if you put that in context, if let's say it takes 10 years off, that means we've got about 40 years. And if we do nothing to change that, and bear in mind that to do 1 inch, I think, of topsoil takes 1,000 years. Sorry, 3 centimeters, an inch takes 1,000 years to regenerate. So if we don't do anything really soon, there will be a huge food crisis, like we've never seen before.
That just happily, I just want to say that, I mean, I completely agree with that as a total crisis. But that also maybe doesn't take into account all the advancements in farming indoors, all the vertical farming people are doing, like all that stuff they're doing, like to save water, all of the, there's all that new carbon sequestration stuff that's happening with the soil. So like maybe some of that will also give more time, and also maybe farming will shift from a more sort of, historical outdoor activity to more of an indoor activity where you see people growing things in trays and things like that, which, I can't say which one is better because I'm not an expert, but, maybe there'll be advancements in that too, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a VC, you'd be investing in that.
Yeah, there was a great, it was disturbing, but also quite eye-opening TED talk about, so basically a farm in a box. So this entrepreneur got really interested in microclimate conditions that would give you the best the best results for individual plants, and built a kind of container-based farming environment where you have sensors of all different kinds in every compartment of the container, and then you can modulate the climate conditions individually for each compartment to get sort of the best flavor, the best shape of these kinds of things. And so he was imagining that this would be a way to get the science and engineering nerds into farming. So it's a really interesting.
Yeah,
it's an interesting proposal.
Yeah, I mean, there's there are so many problems to solve, and I feel like just now we're starting to mobilize the capital needed to employ all the people who are, smart enough to engineer us out of this. Of course, there's a lot of wisdom in indigenous communities too. You don't need a degree in whatever the hell to have knowledge about this necessarily, but I think there's like a lot of hope in all the startups that are trying to get after this. And there is one happy story for today. I wanted to say.
Can I just mention one other thing?
Yes, yes.
So
please.
Meanwhile, in Australia, Craig Kelly, right, MP, was part of the Labour Party, but was forced to resign over many false claims he made about COVID. Well known as a climate denier. So he claimed quite openly, fairly recently, that there was more flooding in the first part of last century than there is now, right? Because he's a climate denier, he's going to say that. And he was fact checked. And it's just as ever with these things, it's totally false. The trend is upward and has been for since the 1900s, since 1900.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
absolutely.
deniers still deny and still tell lies, and we still correct them.
Yeah, I mean, that's not to say that there wasn't ever a flood, in the 1400s that wasn't as bad as, that's not to say that. But yeah, you have to look at the data over a long period of time and a very large area of land to really get the scope of what's going on. And a lot of people don't do that. So yeah, that's a great point. Okay, this story is from The Guardian. This is the last one I have for today, but I wanted to share it because it just made me have a little bit of hope, and this might be a little bit controversial here, but screw it. Okay. This is from The Guardian. It says, this is from March 18th. Reddit investors use GameStop proceeds to help protect gorillas. Okay, I saw this headline and I was like, I need to read this. It said Wall Street Bets members, which is a group on Reddit, I understand, spend gains on donating for endangered animals and also including elephants and turtles. So this is obviously a little bit of a tricky situation where Wall Street and others are concerned. And, I'm not going to advocate for any of the activities of any Reddit groups, except for this one activity, which I feel is so positive. It says here, gorillas, elephants, pangolins, and sea turtles have been handed a lifeline by amateur investors who played the stock market at its own game. Hundreds of thousands of dollars have been spent on helping endangered animals by users of a Reddit trading tips community, giving conservation organizations across the world a much-needed financial boost during a difficult year. The money came from users of the Wall Street Bets subreddit, who earlier this year bought small volumes of shares in the retailer GameStop. Whatever, everybody knows what happened with that. Many of those small investors have spent their gains on animal conservation. Gorillas have been the biggest beneficiaries, partly due to the sad story of Harambe, which still persists as a meme. I think that is so crazy that the meme about Harambe made people care about gorillas in real life. It says, in a typical weekend, the Diane Fossey Gorilla Fund gets 20 new gorilla adoptions, but since Saturday, it received more than 3,500 adoptions, worth more than £250,000. It says many people made out these donations to fictional names, including Jim Cramer's Tears and so forth. I guess it was kind of supposed to be a joke, but a joke that helps to save lives. It says, as well as money, the influx of donations has brought welcome public attention to the Trust's work. A lot of people just aren't aware that gorillas are at risk and that we could lose them. It says the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, best known for running an orphaned elephant rescue center in Kenya, received an unusual $10,000 rise in donations last weekend. They say it's a new supporter base for us for sure, one that we're extremely thankful for. We've currently got more than 90 dependent orphaned elephants in our care, and it's an expensive undertaking. I imagine taking care of an elephant is very expensive. It says adoptions are also a useful way of generating memberships for Florida-based Sea Turtle Conservancy. Organizations like ours don't manufacture and sell a product. We're not even selling a service to a people. We're not cutting hair. We're not fixing their car. We are doing something for the betterment of the planet. In order to raise money to support what we do, you have to give people a nexus, and the adoption program is the thing that we can sell. So this is a great article about just a happy, I don't know if you call it an accident, but just, I don't know. I just feel great that they did this. And I think that it's the fact that it's getting press might also inspire other people to donate. I often give money to the World Land Trust, which has been endorsed by David Attenborough. And I think I might donate again because of this. It just makes me feel like people are kind of coming together. So, yeah. Oh, and Ian said here in the chat, NFT for gorilla, elephant, pangolin, sea turtle. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a way, especially for people who can afford it, who don't need the money, to raise money for wildlife. Absolutely. That would be a great way to spend the money, I think.
Blinding idea. Go for it. I picked up another thing in the same article, which was that the Aspinall Foundation, which has been instrumental as well with the gorillas in the Congo. And they hired Carrie Symonds as the communication director recently. Do you know who Carrie Symonds is?
No.
I didn't expect any of you would. It's Boris's partner, Boris Johnson's partner.
Oh, okay.
So the interesting thing about Carrie Symonds is Carrie Symonds almost certainly will be behind the climate conference that will be convened in Glasgow in like 3 or 4 months' time. So you've got, even though we've got this sort of rather right-wing prime minister who looks like a buffoon, Carrie Symonds is not a buffoon. Her parents, I think both of her parents worked in the Independent newspaper. It's a bit like the Guardian. Although how come she ends up on the right wing, on the right side? However, she has a social conscience. So having her behind that as a communications director will mean that it gets much more attention, and that can only be a good thing.
That's great. I saw the funniest video. It's a bit of a parody on Boris Johnson. I wonder if I can find it, but maybe it's not appropriate to share in this forum, but I'll just say it's just so funny. It's him disinfecting a chair. And it's basically somebody dubbed a bunch of David Attenborough speech about wildlife, and they put it together, and it basically David Attenborough is narrating Boris Johnson cleaning this chair. And it's
I've
very
seen
funny.
it. I've seen
Yes.
it. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
hilarious.
it's absolutely great in this very non-offensive but extremely iconic and hilarious way. So anyway, Darryl, is there anything that you would like to, or Steve, or anybody else that you would like to bring to attention today?
I have a couple of different subjects to potentially discuss.
Outstanding.
So the first one is this week I've noticed some pushback about Bitcoin and its contribution to climate change. So I found some articles that are claiming that Bitcoin is actually a force for good towards climate change mitigation. So the first one, the headline is "Mining Bitcoin for Heat, Strawberries, and Chickens." And the premise of this story is that mining Bitcoin generates so much heat that people in cold environments can use it to heat their chicken coops and save the earth. So,
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
And how much is a 2-bar electric heater versus the server that you need?
Well, but that heater is not going to turn you a profit, right? So there you go.
Yeah, that heater is not computing.
Yeah, there we go.
yep.
I think there was a famous musician in a band called KLF, Bill Drummond. And I'm actually related to Bill Drummond through my father-in-law, strangely enough.
Wow, amazing. One of my favorite albums of all time is the KLF Chill Out album. I love.
All right, so Bill, I've had barbecues with Bill. So Bill was married to my stepfather-in-law's niece, and that's how I know Bill. I didn't know he was famous when I met him at all, but he famously, with the band, they burnt £1 million.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, would that be cheaper than buying a server and heating?
Yeah. It is absurd, but it does go through some numbers, and claims that they spend $70 and they make $100 back, so they do turn a profit. So I'm not exactly sure how they justify it. You'd have to read the article.
They've got to try, haven't they? Really, I mean, at the end of the day, I'll invest in a coal-fired power station and have chickens nearby, right? It's still, I mean, you could argue, I suppose, if you stick those things out in the desert, that it's less damaging to the environment because you can power it off solar. I don't know. There are some syndicates that do exactly that, but then it would be really hard to grow the strawberries and really hard to have the chickens. There's no water, right? So I think they're, clutching at straws.
Yeah, that's
comes to mind.
Yeah. So like the next article that I found in the same subject matter has a much more audacious claim. The headline is "Bitcoin will save our Earth." And it says, by using energy to validate transactions in a way that is independent of any existing grid or source, Bitcoin mining will save the climate. And so essentially this article goes through an interesting spin and comes up with 3 different reasons why Bitcoin is going to save the planet. Number 1, increase energy efficiency by utilizing wasted energy. So there's whole kind of like theory around take back. I didn't quite get that one. The second one, finance the exploration of stranded power sources. So the idea is that Bitcoin is location independent, and you can utilize power that there's no market for in that location other than Bitcoin mining. I don't quite know how that improves the situation. And the last one is really fascinating. It's the idea of it is to push the learning and adoption for renewable energy. So the idea is that because Bitcoin is so energy intensive, it will drive people to come up with a cheap renewable solution. So it's so bad, it's good.
Yeah, it's like Plan 9 from outer space. Yes.
That reminds me of my mom.
gotta-
when she told me that in college to go on a diet, all she would eat was peanut M&Ms, and she got very thin, she said. Anyway.
Yeah. I just wonder, was this written with a black Sharpie and signed D Trump?
Yeah.
No way he knows enough about Bitcoin, and plus, who would publish it? He's banned everywhere.
It's either that or Elon Musk has a huge love for chicken strawberry sandwiches.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so another subject that kind of hit my radar this week. It was an article. The headline is Apple and Facebook's fight isn't actually about privacy or tracking. The real reason Facebook is so worried, transparency is a much bigger threat to its business. So it gets into the whole kind of feud that's going on between Apple and Facebook. It's actually pretty interesting because it lays it out. It really lays out the actual problem with surveillance capitalism. Okay, so it's no secret that Facebook has feelings about the upcoming changes Apple plans to introduce in its iOS 14.5. Apple has said it will require developers to request permission from users before they can collect data or track them while they use their apps. That comes after Apple previously required developers to disclose the information they collect with the information of privacy nutrition labels in the iOS App Store. So these changes apply to all developers, but Facebook seems to be taking it personally, and the company has been making these feelings known. Facebook took out a full-page ads back in December claiming that Apple was a threat to both small businesses and the open internet as we know it. Then Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg targeted Apple during its statements during the company's most recent earnings call in February, claiming that the iPhone maker was engaging in anti-competitive practices. It would be easy to mistake the fight for one over privacy or tracking, but I don't think that's the real issue. Apple isn't going to stop developers from tracking you. It's also not against personalized ads, as Facebook refers to the targeted advertising it shows you. If you want to share everything you do online with Facebook, Apple won't stop you. In that case, a developer can still collect the IDFA for the purpose of targeting ads or tracking conversations. Apple is just going to require developers to be transparent about what data they want to collect and how they want to use it. Then they have to ask your permission. That's what the real fight is over, transparency. And that's why Facebook is so worried. Facebook's problem is that if given a choice, many people will choose not to allow tracking. That's the dirty little secret it would rather not talk about. Facebook doesn't want you to think about tracking and certainly doesn't want you to have a choice. So that's it, right? The underlying premise here is that the surveillance capitalist play is built around deception. It's free. The deception has been so well played over the last 2 decades that a lawmaker in 2018 appeared not to know how Facebook makes money during a hearing grilling the big data companies. This is profound. Over the last century, up until recently, the largest economy in the world built its empire around plundering a plentiful resource, oil. Now, within a decade or two, a new industry has eclipsed the earnings of the previous one around plundering a different resource, ourselves and our data. And the main reason for the rise is directly based around duping us. Most people are oblivious to the dirty details of how much our privacy and how much our behavior is purposefully modified by the data the surveillance capitalists collect. And as this article points out, as soon as people are notified ahead of time and given an option to opt out, a large number of people will choose to do so, and Facebook's business model dissolves away. So I just really love how this article lays it right out. It's basically Facebook's business model relies on deception.
So I don't know what they're going to do about the EU because, there's about 300 million users in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to comply with GDPR. And if they fail to comply, the fine is 6% of revenue. Imagine if there was a 6% fall in revenue at Facebook. That's not going to please shareholders, is it?
Right.
And that's coming down the pipe. Same for Google. So
it's interesting. It seems like there's some chinks in the armor forming, which is what the next article I was going to talk about refers to. So yesterday there were those hearings that I was talking about. And some of the discussion was focused on Section 230, which protects these services from liability around misinformation posted on their platforms. So, Section 230 basically lets them do what they're doing. And Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey said, "I don't think we should be the arbiters of truth, and I don't think the government should be either." While Zuckerberg urged the lawmakers to update the law to ensure it's working as intended, and he added a specific suggestion: Congress could require internet platforms to gain legal protection only by proving that their systems of identifying legal content are up to snuff. So he's basically going, yeah, sure, lawmakers, go and change this. Just make sure that I maintain my monopoly status as we go along. So it's just kind of interesting because what I found interesting about the quotes from the hearing was actually Jack Dorsey's take on it. So at the beginning of the hearing, Dorsey had used his opening remarks to discuss Twitter's idea for a decentralized open source protocol that would purportedly address some of the current problems with social media. So Jack Dorsey is up to something. He's more than hinting at a separate project from Twitter. He didn't directly talk about it in those hearings, but many know that since 2019, he has a project called Bluesky that is attempting to create a set of here's a quote, "create a set of open and decentralized technical standards for social media platforms." Meanwhile, more recently, his company Square just bought the full catalog streaming service Tidal, music streaming service, which is potentially the lesser of the evil by default full catalog music streaming services. So he has been working on Bluesky, which is an open source decentralized protocol for social media platforms, and bought Tidal for $297 million, bringing Jay-Z on board with his plans. So it looks like Jack is building a new open source decentralized social networking platform and will be using music as the catalyst.
That's very fascinating, but $290 million for Tidal seems incredibly low. Or maybe it's not low, I'm just not aware. I'm just surprised about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because apparently Tidal has been failing on paper, which actually isn't that surprising because Spotify has been too. So up until recently. So
well, and Tidal pays quite a bit more per stream.
Oh, do they? I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole point. Well, I mean, so basically Jay-Z and Beyonce and others were using it to exclusively release content. So that was sort of a way to bring people in. But they pay, I think, 2 or 3 times more than Spotify. I need to check, but that was one of the main sort of draws as well. But yeah, it's tricky to find a service I would be interested to read Bandcamp's financial statements actually.
Yeah,
on
Bandcamp,
a purchasing model. I'd be very interested to see what that's like.
Yeah, Bandcamp's a kind of different business model. But
right, that's what I'm saying. Like, I wonder how they're doing,
Oh yeah, apparently Bandcamp's doing good and their payouts are very good for
right.
I think Bandcamp is ethically doing the right thing. I just don't think they're executing it as well as they could.
Yeah, no, definitely it's the best place, but I don't use Bandcamp because first off, I don't like the name. So that bothers me. I also think their website looks like someone made it in Bandcamp, which is maybe that was the original idea. And yeah, I think that the concept is great though. And so I'd just be curious because I know that they're so different from traditional streaming. I'd just be curious to know how they're doing. So if they are doing well, then maybe that's a sign, to others.
But I would just say that the point I was going to make is just that it seems like there's a shift happening in the air. As Ross Talbot was pointing out, Facebook's going to be confronting issues in Europe as well as the United States that I don't think is going to be too easy for them to kind of overcome. It seems like the emperor's new clothes has been kind of pulled, the curtain's been pulled, and kind of onto the deceit. And so it appears to me as if Jack Dorsey sees the writing on the wall. He's more of the visionary. He sees into the future better. And he's recognizing that Twitter is going to have to do a radical shift. And I actually think that Twitter's going to eventually become Bluesky. I think that he's going to open source it and build a social networking platform. And I believe that his with Square buying Tidal is directly connected to his play.
Well, the Twitter icon is certainly the right color.
Oh yeah,
blue fit in there with the bird flying through the sky. Sorry, just random. Yeah, no, but that is fascinating that all that is happening, though. Yeah,
I find it really, really interesting because there's another kind of meme that's been going around this week, connecting with the idea of empowerment of artists on social networks, and how there's a chink in that armor happening as well, because YouTube, and SoundCloud, same thing. Their business model is basically let anybody upload anybody else's shit, and we'll just profit off of it. And you're the content creator, and you don't really get paid unless you have gazillions of views. But generally speaking, they profit off of, my daughter's content creation. She doesn't see a penny of it. And so that whole model, it seems like hasn't been challenged, so they can get away with that. But TikTok is actually making some moves in that way. And what's the one? Oh man, what's the new audio one that everyone's speaking out about?
We're talking about Clubhouse.
Clubhouse, sorry, yeah. So Clubhouse.
So
different alternatives happening that potentially show signs of kinks in the armor of that business model. So it looks like creatives are there's a good future for creatives, I think, coming.
He's got a good surname after all, so one would kind of expect him to do something cool in music, given the other Dorseys that I'm sure you know, Nora.
Oh, you're talking about the jazz musicians?
Totally. I think it's Jimmy and Tommy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he's related to them, but
he shares the name. Good enough for me.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think Jack Dorsey is probably one of the more sane social media billionaires in America. I feel like if I had to put my life in the hands of any of these people, probably Jack Dorsey would be possibly a little higher on my list, just because he seems to act in a slightly less oligarchic way. Like, for example, he was fine taking political advertising off of Twitter. He said, fine, let's do it. Like, no problem. What's the question? So I feel like he sort of leans toward the light a little,
Yeah, I do too. Like it's his approach to a blockchain solution is so different from Facebook and Zuckerberg's. You remember their approach was to kind of commandeer as many bigger companies together so that they can kind of dominate the space and become the centralized blockchain solution. And Jack Dorsey's approach is to kind of be really quiet about it and kind of, build this kind of blue sky thing in the background that is by by the quote at least, designed to be open source and decentralized. Yeah, I'm going to be watching that really closely. I actually reached out to the Bluesky project a couple times on RChain's behalf, but obviously didn't hear anything back.
Yeah, a lot of us did. A lot of us reached out to Bluesky because, we built a lot of what that they're thinking about building.
Exactly.
So,
Well,
yeah.
no means not today, so keep trying.
Yeah, I mean, like to my understanding, Bluesky isn't a layer 1, so they'll need a layer 1.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting to see how many people are essentially copying the business models that we laid out, in detail on video over several years.
Do you think that's being done purposefully, or do you think something else is happening? Or
I think anyone with two pennies to rub together can see how this fits. How see the natural opportunities and architectures that meet those opportunities. It was actually it took me a long time to understand why the RChain community was so out of step. And that's because they were viewing RChain as a payments network. The blockchain population is dominated by folks who see blockchain as a payments network.
Yeah.
I think even the general public sees it as that, which is sad.
Yeah, but even a lot of the so-called technorati, Elon Musk included, see blockchain as a payments network, and that's just wrong. And I think that's because they don't understand that there are things you can do, ways in which you can re-architect everything to make it scale. And that's where I think people sort of look at Bitcoin and Ethereum and proof of work in general and go, oh, well, let's not put anything serious on there except numbers.
Yeah. Even like NFTs, it's still kind of the same thing that you're talking about.
Yeah, well, exactly.
I think the reason for that, well, I can't say for sure, but it seems like because people see an opportunity to make money with cryptocurrency, then that's really going to be the only way that they are introduced to it, or I should say make money through blockchain technology, because if there isn't another way for them to become introduced to it, then that's just what they're going to know. And I guess I feel like that's also kind of a necessity in the beginning, because in order for, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I feel like for the technology to really exist in the way we want it to exist, in terms of coordination and social media and all that stuff, doesn't there first have to be a payments network? So like maybe it's just the natural evolution of things.
Yeah, I addressed exactly this point in China in 2019. I gave several talks on this point.
Oh, yeah.
Which do you think? Which do you think is more feasible from an engineering point of view? Build a payments network and then try to expand it to a data network, or build a data network and then just as a side option you can specialize it to a payments network.
Right.
Boom.
It's much more obvious that you build the data network and then one of its applications is a payments network.
Man, you just said it so simply there. That is exactly it.
There's another dimension to that as well that's very specific to RChain, at least at this point in its evolution. That if you think of, compute is not free, storage isn't free, networking's not free, compute's not free. They're not free. They consume energy, at least, right? So on the basis that they're not free, really what you want is a global computer, right, that you can access and do things on. So you can store things, you can transport information from one place to another, do some computation, and you want it to be, you want to pay for what you've used, not what somebody thinks you might have used, who sets some arbitrary number, but actually know the cost, the actual cost of what it is that you've done in a really transparent way, right? And it's the transparency that's lacking. So if you go to Google Cloud and you buy compute, somebody somewhere in a boardroom set those prices, and they do not necessarily bear any relation to the actual cost. And so you have no idea whether you're paying over the odds or whether that's acceptable on the basis that everyone has to make some sort of profit, right, to keep them going, right? And with RChain, that's free. Yeah. That's there from day one.
Yeah, I mean, I was astonished by the billing from Amazon when we were using Amazon. You know, they would charge us the same in a month when we shut down all of the boxes. Like, wait, what? We haven't used your service, but you're charging us the same as last month when we had heavy usage. Yeah, and on top of that, getting a hold of someone at Amazon to dispute things is really hard. And for a lot of these services, it's becoming increasingly hard to get a hold of anyone and talk to them and say, I think there's a problem here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's maybe not necessarily something that blockchain can solve. Maybe it is, but I just feel that people all around the world are so tired of this sort of state that we live in, that increasingly the services and products and, you know, infrastructure that we rely on to communicate and live is governed by these companies who have no interest in talking with us or answering our questions. And it's sort of becoming a combination of a surveillance state with a Monty Python never-ending hold music sketch. And I think it really does frustrate a lot of people, you know?
Oh yeah, that's the impetus behind the kind of the disintermediation aspect of these blockchain projects that everyone's excited about. I think there's
unfortunately, I mean, it's still the Wild West, right? Because you know, as soon as you do that, then you have the problem that there is no service sector at all, right? There's no one to go to. Hey, the network isn't working. Who do you talk to? Your network is down. Yeah, but there's no one in charge. So service guarantees are a really important thing to be thinking about.
Well, and depending on what kind of communications situation you have on the network, you might not even be able to communicate that the network is down, right?
Yeah, for example, yeah. So all of these things have to be thought through, and there are models for this, but they really have to be thought through. Nora, you want to bring us out? It looks like we're at the end of the hour.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for a great conversation. Thank you everyone out there for listening in the future. And please subscribe to RChain on YouTube, follow RChain on social media. And if you want to be a member, you can do that at rchain.coop. And thank you all so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.